On September the 9th of 2019, Florida woman Mary Leanne Fritz was arrested twice, once for stalking and then for stealing a cop car. In the afternoon, 30-year-old Fritz followed an unnamed woman into the High Springs police station. The latter claimed that Fritz, a resident of Gainesville, was stalking her, and they reportedly had history in that regard as previous complaints had been filed. Fritz was consequently handcuffed and placed in the back of a marked cruiser. In the moments that followed, she slipped her restraints and reached the front of the vehicle through a partition. Fritz commandeered the cop car, which she then rammed through the station's automatic gate. She left Alachua County with deputies tracking her via helicopter and High Springs police monitoring her movements through GPS. Upon re-entering Alachua, she was stopped in the 4100 block of Northwest 93rd Avenue. She was taken to the county jail and held on a total bond of $95,000, with charges that included fleeing police, resisting arrest, and grand theft of a vehicle. She was additionally charged with stalking, criminal mischief, and with probation violation for making violent contact with her victim. Number 10. Incident in Detroit. In June of 2023, a police officer was paying for his fuel at a BP station located near the Southfield Freeway and Joy Road in Detroit, Michigan. The unnamed cop was off duty but wearing his official uniform as he was getting ready to start his shift at a Taylor Swift concert downtown. CCTV captured two young men, one of whom was shirtless, standing in line behind him. In the moments that followed, the shirtless suspect ambushed the cop and tried to take his service weapon. The would-be robber's accomplice brandished the pistol from his waistband and pointed it at the officer. The latter maintained the grip on his gun even after he was thrown to the floor by his attacker. The brawl continued out of the camera's view as the suspect with the pistol grabbed several products from the store. He then fled, while his partner, who'd failed to dispossess the officer of his gun, followed suit. In the incident's aftermath, Police Chief James White praised the officer for dealing with the situation without firing his gun after he'd regained control of it. As of the latest updates on the matter, two teens were arrested for the attempted robbery and charged as adults, facing multiple felony counts. Number 9. Brandy Bullington. In January of 2022, officers from the North Olmsted Police Department in Ohio were called to a local Walmart after a loss prevention officer had detained two people on suspicion of theft. Law enforcement interviewed the suspects, 44-year-old Cleveland man Alexander Michaelowitz and 40-year-old Brandy Bullington, also from Cleveland. While searching the former, they discovered that he was in possession of a homemade zip gun. He was escorted out of the store and placed in a cruiser, while Bullington remained in the loss prevention office with two employees and an officer. Bullington had told the latter that she was pregnant, and she was therefore handcuffed with her hands in front of her body. As captured on CCTV, while the cop was busy collecting evidence, Bullington lunged for his service weapon. The workers fled the room while the unnamed officer and Bullington wrestled on the floor over control of the pistol. The woman briefly gained top position, but the cop was able to put her on her backside. He then bundled Bullington into the corner of the room and punched her in the head repeatedly. His partner rushed into the office and secured the woman on the floor. The cop who'd been attacked then kicked Bullington while she was down. During the melee, the woman had gouged him in the face in multiple spots, and he required treatment at a local hospital. A search of Bullington and Michaelowicz's vehicle produced a significant amount of what the police suspected was methamphetamine. In the aftermath, Bullington admitted that she'd faked being pregnant, and as of the latest updates on the matter, she and Michaelowicz were charged with robbery and had additional charges pending. Number 8. Roxan Rimmer. Western Pennsylvania woman Roxan Rimmer was sentenced to 4 to 8 years in the fall of 2015 after she'd previously admitted to stealing a cop car and leading law enforcement on a chase, all while she was handcuffed behind her back. The incident took place in January of 2015, and it began after 28-year-old Roxan Rimmer was accused of shoplifting in Beaver County. She fled from the scene in a car driven by her grandfather, whom law enforcement pulled over moments later. Rimmer was removed from the vehicle and seated in the back of a police cruiser as she screamed, "Mommy, Mommy!" while law enforcement was searching her grandfather's vehicle. Rimmer managed to squeeze her body through an open partition in the cruiser and reached the driver's seat. She put the vehicle in gear and drove off, briefly colliding with her grandfather's car, as shown in footage captured by the cruiser's dash cam. With her back turned to the steering wheel and while still handcuffed, Rimmer was able to operate the official vehicle. As later reported by Center Township Police Chief Barry Kramer, she drove at very high speeds with that position, somehow manipulating the gears and steering the wheel. After a chase lasted nearly 10 miles, she crashed the car and abandoned it. The police vehicle sustained damage, as did several cars belonging to members of the public, but no injuries were reported. Rimmer got out and hitched a ride that dropped her in Aliquippa, where she was picked up by local police while still in handcuffs. As she was led to jail, Rimmer told a reporter that she only remembered being in the back of the police vehicle. The woman was charged with aggravated assault, reckless endangerment, fleeing and eluding police, and robbery. During her court appearance, Rimmer's lawyer stated, "This is a prime example of what drugs can do to you." Rimmer apologized and cried in court, saying that the arrest had saved her life. Number 7. Shante Daniels. On July the 9th of 2023, former Memphis detective Mark LeSure, aged 57, collapsed in his driveway and succumbed to a heart attack. In the moments that followed, a woman called 911 and officers arrived at the scene, where LeSure was pronounced dead. The police combed through his security footage and found that in his last moments, he'd been with a woman outside his home. She was later identified as 27-year-old Shante Daniels, and it would emerge that she'd placed the 911 call. As shown in the footage, after Daniels had witnessed LeSure's medical emergency, she briefly went into his home. She then came out with an extra phone before going through the deceased officer's pockets. Daniels also made a video call during which she said, "We are going to see who knows the law." Once she was brought in for questioning, the full extent of her theft from the dead cop was revealed. Daniels reported that she and LeSure had argued over gas money, and the latter emerged with $10 that he'd intended to give to her seconds before suffering the heart attack. The woman seized the moment to go into his home and take his Samsung phone and his wallet, which contained $100. After rifling through LeSure's pockets, she also grabbed the $10 that he'd dropped. Later on, Daniels used the cop's phone to transfer herself $1,500, which she spent on shoes and beauty treatments, including a haircut and nails. Daniels was taken to the Shelby County Jail facing charges of aggravated burglary, 2 counts of theft of property in the amount of $1,000 to $2,500, and identity theft. LeSure was a 23-year veteran of the force and well known within his community. Speaking of the theft, his aunt told WREG he didn't deserve this and described him as one of the good guys. Number 6. Taana Lon. Off-duty New York City police officer Ali Shepard picked up 20-year-old escort Taana Lon at the intersection of Liberty Avenue and Sackman Street in Brownsville, Brooklyn, in October of 2018. Lawton would later report that there was another woman in the car and that Shepard, a 13-year veteran of the police force and a doubly deployed military veteran, had planned for all 3 of them to have intercourse. While heading to a hotel in the city, 38-year-old Shepard stopped at an ATM. As he got out, he left his Jeep Wrangler idling with the keys in the ignition. Moments later, Lawton, who was pregnant at the time, took off in the vehicle. Arguably the worst of Shepard's poor decisions was that he'd left his police-issued handgun in the car. The NYPD tracked Lawton down to Far Rockaway, Queens, within about 24 hours of the incident. They found the Jeep Wrangler, but the weapon was missing, and the escort denied that she'd ever seen it. The theft would have repercussions for Lawton and Shepard, as the former was charged with grand larceny of a vehicle while the officer was suspended without pay for 30 days and later placed on desk duty. It was speculated that he could be charged with eliciting the services of an escort, a Class A misdemeanor, risking a sentence of up to a year behind bars. Following her arrest, Lawton reported that Shepard was a long-time customer who owed her $2,000. When he picked her up in October, she was allegedly expecting him to settle the debt, but he didn't. She motivated her decision to steal his car as a reaction to the owed payment, as well as to him pressing her to have relations and allegedly holding her against her will. As reported by the New York Post, Lawton repeated the scheme on another law enforcement officer less than a year after the incident with Shepard. Ezra Lewis, a 28-year-old corrections officer from Queens, claimed that he'd given Lawton a ride in his 2005 Grey Infiniti in April of 2019. While he stopped at a deli to get some cash, Lawton commandeered the vehicle, which contained Lewis's possessions, including his gun and a bag with his uniform. She drove to meet her cousin, and together they raided the Infiniti. Lawton was eventually arrested in Lewis's vehicle in East New York, but it remained unclear if the officer's handgun was recovered. Number 5. Tracey Weathers. In December of 2018, a woman from North Little Rock, Arkansas, opened the kitchen window of a Rose City police substation and climbed inside. 40-year-old Tracey Weathers then proceeded to steal several bags of popcorn. An officer caught her in the act and ordered the woman to get on the ground. Weathers soon admitted, "I just broke in to get some food," followed by, "I broke in here, take me to jail." The woman was arrested for burglary and booked at the Pulaski County Detention Center on a $5,000 bond. Locals, interviewed by Fox 16 in connection to the incident, were shocked and described the act of breaking into and stealing from a police station as unheard of and wild. Some were amused by the incident, but others pushed for clemency and argued that Weathers, who was reported as homeless, was just hungry. They proposed that the woman be helped and not punished. Number 4. Incident in Shanghai. An unnamed Chinese man went to a Shanghai police station in October of 2016 to complain about his recruitment agency, but was reportedly turned down. Based on his report, he was a farmer who'd had trouble finding work in the city. CCTV showed him sitting on a bench while several officers were in the room. Once he was alone, the man disconnected an officer's cell phone, which was charging on a desk, grabbed his belongings from a sofa, and tried to leave the station. The suspect then realized that the door was locked and found himself trapped in the room. He tried to discreetly throw the phone on the sofa, but the entire incident had been recorded. The man was arrested for theft, and according to the Global Times, said of the failed attempt, "I just felt bad because they didn't take my complaint seriously, so I took the cell phone to sell it to make myself feel better." Number 3. Tony Shannon. During the 2013 FA Cup semi-final between Wigan and Millwall at London's Wembley Stadium, chaos erupted in the stands as fans started fighting each other and charging police officers down the tunnels. Photos and videos from the scene showed bloodied supporters embroiled in battle as law enforcement struggled to gain control of the situation. 4 officers were injured in the clashes and 14 supporters were arrested. One Millwall fan made headlines in the aftermath for stealing a police officer's hat. 27-year-old Tony Shannon was recorded smirking while tucking the official uniform item in his jacket. He was reported to have turned it in after leaving the stadium. In an ITV interview, he described the act as a drunken thing and noted that he had simply found the hat on the floor and not taken it by force. Shannon reported that the move had a severe impact on multiple aspects of his life. He felt like he shamed his family through his behavior and worried about the harassment that his 10-year-old daughter would have faced at school as a result of his newfound infamy. Shannon also said that his mother wasn't talking to him and that he faced being banned from attending his team's games, an outcome he claimed would leave him devastated. The man concluded, "I wish I'd never done it. That's probably one of the worst things I've ever done." As always, thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe, and maybe it will be your video that we'll be doing next. Number 2. Asiana. Officers from the North County Police Cooperative's Crisis Intervention Team responded to a woman experiencing a mental health crisis in the Velda Village Hills neighborhood of St. Louis, Missouri, on October the 9th of 2022. The ensuing interaction was captured on bystanders' cell phone video and on the officers' body cams. The police told the woman, identified by Fox 2 as 28-year-old Asiana, that they would call an ambulance for her as she appeared to be exhibiting erratic behavior. As their interaction progressed, the woman became distressed and ran away, but then turned around and saw the unoccupied police cruiser. She got behind the wheel as the driver, Sergeant Tony Moutre, and his partner tried to stop her. Asiana sped off but then either fell or jumped from the vehicle into the street. The cruiser kept going forward and struck a tree before it rolled backwards and hit another tree. Officers picked up Asiana and arrested her. She was taken to a local hospital to be assessed and faced charges of stealing a motor vehicle and first-degree property damage. She was subsequently fitted with an ankle monitor and entered a special diversion program through St. Louis County's mental health court. Asiana gave an interview for Fox 2 in the incident's wake and stated that she wasn't on her medication on the day of the motor theft. As she watched the viral clip, Asiana said, "That's not me, you know, that's not me." Through tears, she revealed that she'd served 6 years in the U.S. Army, adding that in the last few years of her service, she'd noticed her mental health beginning to deteriorate. At the end of the interview, Sergeant Moutre went to Asiana's home while in uniform as he wanted to let her know that she was not alone. They exchanged smiles and greetings, with Asiana telling the cop, "I love how positive you were," and Moutre asking if she was doing better. Asiana added, "I appreciate it. You just don't know how much I appreciate it," before they hugged. The woman echoed the sentiments expressed by North County Police Cooperative Major Ron Martin, who praised Moutre and his partner for rapidly recognizing Asiana's mental health episode and then de-escalating the situation. We have our previous episode about when stealing goes wrong lined up for you right after number 1. Stick around if you'd like to watch that one as well still. Number 1. Kendra Boon. On February the 1st of 2024, law enforcement in Marion County, Florida, responded to reports of a female suspect trying to snatch an elderly woman's keys at a shopping center in Silver Springs. At around 2 p.m., Deputy Chris Whitty went to the center's parking lot in his patrol SUV and approached the suspect, named as 33-year-old Kendra Boon. He left his key in the ignition, got out and told Boon to stand near the rear of the vehicle. As shown in body cam video, while the officer was making his way around the vehicle, the woman jumped inside through an open passenger side window and quickly slid into the driver's seat. Whitty repeatedly yelled out "no" and ordered her to stop. He was able to open the driver's side door, but Boon took off with it still flung wide. She fled eastbound on East Highway 40 while the officer radioed his colleagues to say that the woman had taken off in his car. A high-speed chase ensued, during which Boon drove erratically at speeds of well over 100 miles per hour while trying to evade the deputies pursuing her. Law enforcement deployed stop sticks, but Boon made a U-turn before reaching them. She eventually lost control of the cop car, crossed into the oncoming traffic lane and collided head-on with a pickup truck. Boon and 2 of the other vehicle's occupants, a South Carolina man and a woman in their 70s, were pronounced dead at the scene, while a third was taken to the hospital in critical condition. A few days after the incident, Marion County Sheriff Billy Woods held a press conference and said of Boon, "This moron stole a police vehicle and killed 2 human beings," while maintaining that Officer Whitty had done absolutely nothing wrong. During the conference, Woods held up dozens of sheets of paper pertaining to Boon's extensive criminal record. She had 13 felony charges and 9 misdemeanor charges. Woods also implied that Boon, who'd gotten out of jail a few weeks prior to the incident, should have never been freed in the first place. She was convicted in Marion County and sentenced to 2 years in 2022, and also had a separate conviction in Orange County. Woods claimed that a judge had made the sentences concurrent, not consecutive, meaning that with credit for time served, Boon spent less time behind bars. Woods concluded, "If this person would have been in jail, I wouldn't have 2 dead innocent people," before adding, "Her, I don't give a crap about." Las Vegas law enforcement pulled over a Toyota Tundra on December the 23rd of 2021 after finding, through a license check, that its registration was suspended. The truck was later determined to have been stolen. The driver, who was subsequently identified as 57-year-old Eric Holland, initially stopped but then drove off. Officers followed him for about 3 miles until he pulled into a parking garage near the Rio Hotel and Casino. Holland emerged in another stolen truck, a Chevrolet Avalanche. The police realized that the vehicle was driven by the same suspect and pursued it for a few miles before Holland pulled over near the Orleans Casino. He disregarded officers' commands upon exiting the vehicle and tried to flee on foot, but was subdued with a taser. Law enforcement checked the vehicle and detected a foul odor coming from inside. They found a severed human head in a trash bag, as well as a torso and 2 legs in large coolers in the back. Following Holland's arrest on suspicion of murder, he initially tried to claim that the human remains were already inside the truck when he'd stolen it and that he hadn't known about them. However, the victim was identified as 65-year-old Richard Miller, a friend of his who'd been reported missing for about a month. He'd died from multiple gunshot wounds, one of which was to the head. Holland eventually admitted that he'd killed Miller but didn't elaborate on the motive beyond saying that they'd had an argument while both of them were armed. Holland claimed he tried to do right by him and bury Miller, but it was too difficult to move him as he stood at 6'4" and weighed 250 pounds. And so he decided to dismember his body. He was sentenced to a minimum of 18 and a maximum of 45 years in prison for second-degree murder and felony theft. Number 6. Melissa Bergman. Over a 2-day period in late July of 2018, Ohio woman Melissa Bergman stole multiple packages from her neighbor's doorsteps during what she'd later describe as a mental breakdown. At least one of the thefts was caught on surveillance video. The prolific porch pirate drove through her neighborhood and reportedly made off with 28 packages, but was ultimately convicted on 12 counts of theft. Bergman was sentenced to 180 days in Warren County Jail, but the remainder of her time was suspended after 30 days, and she'd remain on probation for 3 years following her release. While she was generally viewed as a bored suburban housewife, the 30-year-old claimed that her mental health had been severely affected by problems in her marriage and PTSD from her time in the military. Several months after the thefts, she told forensic psychologists interviewing her that God had told her to take the packages and give them to others. The judge presiding over her case was skeptical, noting that she hadn't done as purportedly commanded, but instead opened the items, threw away the packaging, and distributed their contents around her home. Bergman claimed that her husband, from whom she eventually separated, was very controlling and only wanted her to stay home and care for their 2 children. She pointed to the pressure of her failing marriage and the medication she'd taken for her severe PTSD as factors in the spree. Bergman reported that she'd been abused multiple times by different men during her time in the army, which included serving in Afghanistan from 2006 to 2008. The army didn't comment on the allegations. Number 5. Roxan Rimmer Brisbee. From November of 2020 to March of 2022, a Texas woman was involved in a $3.3 million financial scheme while running a business that purported to help clients raise their credit score. 29-year-old Roxan Rimmer Brisbee operated Rose Credit Repair in North Harris County, which claimed it would use the law to find common errors and improve credit scores by 50 to 100 points within 35 days or less. Law enforcement eventually learned that Brisbee had fraudulently used dozens of items of identification, such as her client's ID, social security numbers, names, or dates of birth. She filed roughly 133 false reports that appeared to be coming from the police about the loss or theft of credit cards, even though most of her clients had never authorized her to do so. Brisbee was reported to have obtained the original police report from a woman named Valerie Cobio and then copied it multiple times. She failed to reduce Cobio's credit, but the scam did temporarily work out for several of her other clients, as financial institutions would honor the police reports and reverse their credit. Brisbee's operation unraveled when one of the banks contacted law enforcement and the discrepancies emerged. Officers raided Rose Credit Repair on July the 7th of 2022 and arrested Brisbee on charges of forgery and fraudulent use of personal information. She faced anywhere from 5 to 99 years in prison. Number 4. Incident in Texcoco. A would-be mugger paid a heavy toll in late July of 2020 after he'd targeted a bus in Texcoco, Mexico. 2 thieves were caught by the vehicle surveillance camera attempting to enter while it was stopped at a station. The driver sped off upon hearing the commotion. One of the men, who was believed to have been armed, wasn't able to get on the bus while his partner had made it inside, demanding money and grabbing a cell phone belonging to one of the 6 male passengers. The thief then rushed for the open door but quickly realized the bus was already in motion. A man near the door grabbed his arm and stopped him from getting out. The thief turned around and tried to punch him, at which point he was charged by all the passengers aboard and dragged to the ground. The men relentlessly punched and kicked him for an extended period of time as he begged for mercy. As the brutal beatdown was unfolding, the driver continued on his route. He'd tried stopping the vehicle, presumably so that the men could throw the thief out, but they prevented him from leaving. They continued to curse, stomp, and strike him, ripping his tank top off in the process. The bus eventually reached a stop in the municipality of Los Reyes de la Paz. What followed was captured by a vehicle following the bus. 3 men dragged the thief out, one of whom soccer kicked him in the head, briefly rendering him unconscious. Before they left the scene, another pulled the thief's pants off, leaving him naked in the street and barely moving from the multitude of strikes he'd sustained. It wasn't clear if the incident was reported to the police, but footage of it went viral. Number 3. Stephanie Bourdain. In 2014, Stephanie Bourdain was arrested for leading a gang of youths that broke into multiple homes in Quebec, Canada. Within the span of several months, her crew burglarized over 40 houses and made off with items totaling an estimated $58,000. Bourdain, who was then in her early 20s, was arrested after her white Mitsubishi Lancer with custom pink rims had been spotted at multiple crime scenes. As soon as she was taken into custody, the former nursing student asked for permission to delete her Facebook, fearing that her photos would incriminate her, but was denied. It ultimately worked in her favor, as Bourdain would subsequently become internationally known as the world's most attractive thief. She'd done some calendar modeling prior to her arrest, but when news of her crime spree broke, her online photos went viral. While stealing had gone wrong for her in terms of her criminal record and legal punishment, it also proved a launching pad for her modeling career. As she received multiple contract offers, she was eventually recruited by B Models Management in 2015. Early the following year, Bourdain was sentenced to 90 days in jail, which she only had to serve on weekends for the burglary spree. A judge allowed her to pursue the opportunities that came with her newfound fame, but forbade her from using her past as a thief to promote herself as a model. Bourdain told a media outlet that she couldn't advertise a product as Stephanie the Criminal and described the ruling as a pretty okay condition. Number 2. Wesley Souza de Araujo. Brazilian thief Wesley Souza de Araujo and an accomplice approached 2 women in Acalandia in the country's west. They cornered them on a motorbike and demanded they hand over their cell phones. One of the victims was professional MMA fighter and advanced Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner Monique Bastos, who at the time had 6 fights on her record. After one of the thieves had grabbed her phone, 23-year-old Bastos realized that they weren't armed, so she knocked down their motorbike. She'd later tell a media outlet, "I wasn't afraid, I knew I could immobilize them." His accomplice fled, but Araujo, the driver, didn't get a chance to escape as Bastos took him down. She then placed him in a rear naked choke before transitioning to a triangle choke, which involved trapping his head and arm with her legs. An onlooker recorded the incident on their phone. As Bastos applied pressure to his neck, Araujo started crying, asking for his mum and daddy, while also pleading with people to call the police. He exclaimed, "Help! Jesus, I swear it was the first time I've ever done this. Help, Lord, somebody help me!" Bastos held Araujo in the lock for roughly 20 minutes until the police arrived to take him into custody. While at the local police station, he reportedly denied trying to rob the women. Number 1. Papa Rao. A video out of India went viral in the spring of 2022 of a thief who'd gotten stuck while trying to escape a temple he'd burglarized in Jadimudi village, Andhra Pradesh. The suspect, who was named as 30-year-old Papa Rao, was reported to have drilled a hole into the Jami Elama temple wall in order to steal the silver ornaments inside. Rao's actions were reportedly fueled by his alcohol addiction. He got trapped halfway in the opening on the way out and started pleading with bystanders to free him. They instead filmed the thief as he desperately tried to wiggle out and alerted the authorities. When officers arrived at the scene, they opened the temple and pushed Rao out from the other end of the hole. He was then taken into custody and booked for trespassing. Thanks for watching. Would you rather be caught trespassing in Area 51 or trying to steal a cop car? Let us know in the comments section below.